Welcome, dearly beloved anointed ones. They say emotional manipulation is an art. Funny how it's only called manipulation when you're the one mastering your emotions. People are talking about you, chosen one, not because you've done something wrong, but because you've done something rare. You've learned to stay emotionally intelligent in a world addicted to emotional chaos. You've become fluent in a language most people never even realized existed, the language of energy, tone, silence, and emotional truth. And when someone who's used to controlling the room suddenly realizes they can't control you, they panic. They start whispering. They start labeling. And the easiest label they can reach for? Manipulator. It's ironic, isn't it? You spent years being emotionally played by guilt trippers, gaslighters, and professional victims with PhDs in drama. And now that you've mastered emotional awareness, you're the villain of the story. The same people who taught you manipulation through their betrayal are now accusing you of it because you finally stopped handing them the remote to your mood. Here's a wild psychological fact. Studies show that emotionally intelligent people can read micro-expressions in under a quarter of a second. That's faster than your brain can process a full sentence. That means before someone even finishes their lie, your spirit has already decoded the motive behind it. Now imagine living with that kind of discernment every day. No wonder people get uncomfortable. To them, your awareness feels invasive. To you, it's just clarity. But the world doesn't know what to do with clarity. It's allergic to people who see too deeply. So it twists perception, calling mastery manipulation, calling emotional control coldness, calling boundaries arrogance. They can't grasp that what you've developed isn't manipulation. It's emotional mastery with moral restraint. It's reading energy without exploiting it. It's knowing the storm is coming and choosing to walk through it without raising your voice. And here's the funny part. The same ones calling you manipulative are still trying to emotionally manipulate each other. They're in a group chat somewhere right now, emotionally malfunctioning because your silence doesn't give them the dopamine they crave. They want a reaction, you give reflection. They want chaos, you give calculation. You're not emotionally manipulative, you're emotionally unavailable to manipulation. So yes, they're talking about you, but not because you've lost control, it's because you've gained mastery. And in a world where emotional immaturity is the norm, control looks like magic, and discernment looks like witchcraft. But what they don't realize is this: you didn't study manipulation, you survived it. And survival turned you into a mirror they can't lie to anymore. Now let's get into why they really can't handle that. Number one, people don't realize that when they call you emotionally manipulative, what they're actually reacting to is the shock of seeing themselves clearly for the first time. You don't twist emotions, you mirror them. You have this unexplainable way of bringing people face to face with their own energy. The moment they talk to you, something in their spirit starts trembling. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your presence exposes what they've been hiding. You don't even have to say much. The vibration of truth that flows through you does all the talking. And for people who survive by pretending, that truth feels like a personal attack. When you're a mirror, you naturally reflect back what people project. If someone approaches you with kindness, they see peace. But if they come with manipulation, insecurity, or deceit, what they meet is their own energy bouncing right back at them. You don't need to argue, convince, or chase. Your energy does the revealing. And when that revelation hits, they don't say, "Wow, you made me realize my hypocrisy." No, they'll say, "You're playing mind games." Because it's easier to accuse you than admit they've just seen a version of themselves they didn't want to face. You've noticed how people start to act strange after being around you for a while. One minute they're comfortable, the next they're defensive. That's not you changing, that's their mask cracking. Your authenticity has a way of disarming pretenders. It strips away their social armor and leaves their real feelings exposed. Jealousy, insecurity, guilt, desire, and everything they thought they buried. You don't manipulate those emotions, you just hold up the mirror. But the world isn't built for mirrors, it's built for illusion. What makes this dynamic even more fascinating is how subtle it is. You're not trying to read people, you simply feel them. Their tone, their energy, their silence. It all speaks louder than their words. And because you respond to energy rather than performance, they feel seen through. That's when the discomfort begins. You're not emotionally manipulative, you're emotionally transparent. And for people who live off manipulation, transparency is lethal. They call you manipulative because they can't label what they don't understand. But the truth is, you're not bending anyone's emotions, you're reflecting their truth. And nothing terrifies a pretender more than meeting someone who refuses to play pretend. Number 2, people who call you emotionally manipulative usually do it because they can't understand how you read situations so effortlessly. You pick up on what's not being said, the tension behind the smile, the hesitation in the voice, the guilt hidden behind, "I'm fine." You see through emotional camouflage like it's written in subtitles. To someone emotionally disconnected from themselves, that kind of perception looks supernatural. They call it manipulation because it feels like you're using some secret power to control them. But what's really happening is that you're tuned into a frequency they've never learned to hear. You've spent years developing emotional fluency, the ability to sense intention through tone, timing, and vibration. You can tell when someone's lying before they finish their sentence, not because you're suspicious, but because your intuition translates energy faster than logic. Most people live on the surface, reacting to words. You live beneath it, responding to essence. That's what makes you unpredictable. They can't trick you with charm or emotion because your awareness cuts through it. They can't guilt trip you because you can feel the motive before they even craft the sentence. To them, that's witchcraft. To you, it's just discernment. What they don't understand is that emotional intelligence isn't about controlling others. It's about mastering yourself. You've learned that reacting to everything gives people power over your peace. So instead of exploding, you analyze. Instead of absorbing, you observe. Instead of matching energy, you read it and respond with precision. That unnerves people who depend on emotional confusion to stay in control. When their manipulation tactics bounce off you, they panic. That's when the name-calling begins. They can't admit they're losing control, so they label your calmness as manipulation. It's also worth noting that emotionally illiterate people can't tell the difference between empathy and strategy. When you respond thoughtfully instead of impulsively, they assume you're calculating. When you understand them too well, they assume you're scheming. But the truth is simpler. You're just present. You pay attention. You connect dots they don't even see. And that makes them uncomfortable because your awareness exposes their emotional immaturity. They think you're reading minds. You're not. You're just emotionally fluent in a world that's forgotten how to feel. You don't manipulate, you understand. And in a society addicted to misunderstanding, understanding feels like power. Number 3. When people say you manipulate emotions, what they're really reacting to is how uncomfortable they feel around your truth. You don't control people's feelings. You just have a way of disturbing the emotional comfort zones they've built around their lies. Most people live in emotional autopilot. They repeat patterns, wear masks, and convince themselves they're okay. Then you show up and suddenly their emotional walls start to shake. You don't do anything special. You simply exist in your truth, and that truth starts peeling layers off everything false around you. It's not manipulation, it's disruption. a natural reaction to authenticity in a world that's grown addicted to pretending. Your energy doesn't allow people to hide. When they interact with you, something deep within them starts to itch. You remind them of what they've avoided feeling, the guilt they've buried, the fear they've masked, the insecurities they've tried to outsmart. They call that discomfort you playing games. But what's really happening is that you're holding space for what they've refused to face. You've become a mirror that doesn't bend to their comfort level. So instead of doing the hard emotional work, they take the easy route, labeling you as manipulative so they don't have to change. The truth is, people prefer predictable emotions. They want to know that their manipulation tactics will still work, that their guilt trips will land, that their anger will intimidate. But when they try that on you, it fails. You don't respond how they expect. You stay calm when they want chaos. You detach when they want drama. You forgive when they want you bitter. That kind of response ruins their emotional script. And when you disrupt someone's emotional pattern, they don't call you wise. They call you manipulative. Because your peace makes their dysfunction loud. You're not trying to unsettle anyone. Your growth just doesn't match their comfort zone anymore. People who live off emotional control see your boundaries as rebellion. They need predictable reactions to feel powerful, and you no longer provide that. That's what truly unsettles them. Your ability to stay centered when their energy demands submission. You didn't manipulate their emotions. You broke their illusion of control. And once illusion dies, truth takes over. And truth has never been comfortable for anyone still living in a lie. Number 4, you've learned that emotions were never meant to control you. They were meant to serve you. That's what makes you different. You don't use emotions to manipulate outcomes or people. You use them as instruments for clarity, understanding, and balance. You've discovered that anger can be direction, sadness can be depth, and fear can be wisdom when understood properly. Most people haven't reached that level of awareness yet. They weaponize what they feel because they haven't learned to process it. They use emotions to guilt, to control, to gain sympathy, or to avoid responsibility. But you turned emotion into a form of mastery. You no longer bleed on people who didn't cut you. You turn the wound into wisdom. The world is addicted to emotional drama. People mistake chaos for passion and manipulation for connection. You've stepped outside of that cycle. You understand that true emotional strength doesn't mean suppressing your feelings. It means channeling them with intention. You can feel deeply without drowning in it, love fiercely without losing yourself, and stay compassionate without being used. That balance unnerves people who thrive on extremes. To them, your control looks cold, your calm looks detached, and your silence looks strategic. But what they're actually witnessing is emotional discipline, something they can't recognize because they've never practiced it. You've mastered emotional alchemy, turning pain into perception, heartbreak into higher understanding, and disappointment into discernment. You can walk through betrayal and come out more aware instead of more bitter. You can sit with your emotions without needing to broadcast them for validation. That kind of maturity is rare, and people who haven't developed it assume it's manipulation. They think you're playing emotional chess when in truth, you've just stopped playing emotional checkers. When people can't sway your emotions anymore, they'll say you're heartless. When they can't guilt you, they'll say you're selfish. When they can't provoke you, they'll say you're calculating. But none of that is true. It's just projection from those who use emotions as tools of control. You've learned that emotions are signals, not chains. They're meant to inform your choices, not dictate them. You don't weaponize what you feel, you refine it. And in a world that thrives on emotional confusion, your ability to stay balanced is both your shield and your power. Number 5, you don't toy with people's feelings. You simply refuse to participate in the illusions they've built around their emotional life. Your presence has a way of stirring what's been hidden, of bringing suppressed feelings to the surface without judgment. The grief they've tucked away, the jealousy they've disguised as indifference, the self-doubt they've buried under bravado. All of it starts moving the moment they encounter your energy. You're not seeking to provoke or manipulate, you're simply unwilling to let falsehood persist. That refusal to ignore what's real forces them to feel, and most people are terrified of feeling what they've long avoided. Your energy acts as a catalyst. It shakes the foundations of their emotional avoidance. The feelings they've locked away don't vanish quietly anymore. They roar, they whisper, they demand attention. And they instinctively direct their anger toward you because it's easier to blame an external source than to confront internal truths. They curse you for making them feel too much, but the reality is that you've done nothing but reflect what was always there. You didn't invent their jealousy, their fear, or their shame. You simply refused to let them hide behind it. Healing always comes with discomfort, and what you offer, intentionally or not, is a mirror for transformation. You've learned that growth is never gentle for those unwilling to look at themselves. People mistake your presence for emotional assault, but the real challenge isn't you. It's the truths you awaken inside them. Every uncomfortable feeling you stir is actually a key to liberation, a chance to reconcile what they've ignored. Transformation always demands confrontation. They see your ability to awaken buried emotions as a threat, because most people would rather stay numb than face reality. But you don't compromise your integrity to soothe their denial. Your energy is unapologetically honest. You force the buried to rise, not for your gain, but because honesty cannot be hidden indefinitely. In a world addicted to emotional avoidance, your presence is revolutionary. And that's why, when you show up, the air shifts, hearts tremble, and the ones who can't face themselves curse the one person who dares to hold up the light. Number 6. You've become a walking lie detector, and it's not because you're suspicious or nosy. It's because your spirit has been trained by experience. You've been betrayed by smiles that hid envy, manipulated by voices that pretended to care, and deceived by people who wore love as camouflage. That journey sharpened your discernment. Now, you can sense manipulation before it's spoken, deceit before it's formed, and motives before they're disguised. You pick up on shifts in energy that others dismiss. You can feel when someone's words and their spirit don't align, when the tone doesn't match the intention. To most, that awareness feels supernatural. To you, it's survival turned into intuition. People who thrive on manipulation are terrified of you because you can't be fooled. Their tactics lose oxygen in your presence. They can't run their usual games, the guilt trips, the emotional baiting, the subtle gaslighting, because you catch the vibration of deceit instantly. You've mastered the ability to stay 3 steps ahead, not through calculation, but through spiritual sensitivity. You're not analyzing, you're knowing. And when they realize their usual methods bounce off you, their ego panics. Exposure is their biggest fear, and your presence feels like a spotlight. That's when the projection begins. They can't admit they've been disarmed, so they flip the script. They call you manipulative to deflect from their own intentions. They accuse you of what they secretly are, hoping to blur the truth. It's a desperate attempt to shift the narrative before their facade collapses. But deep down, they know you see them. And nothing frightens a deceiver more than being seen clearly. You've reached a point where your spirit doesn't just read people, it reveals them. Not by confrontation, but by vibration. The truth in you naturally exposes what's false in others. And that's why people can't stay comfortable around you for long. They either grow or they go. You didn't choose to be a lie detector. Life chose that for you. The betrayals, the disappointments, the heartbreaks, they were all training grounds for discernment. Now deceit can't survive in your presence, and the irony is, while they call you manipulative to protect their mask, it's your integrity that's been revealing their game all along. Number 7, your calmness isn't silence, and it isn't weakness. It's a statement. When chaos hits, when people scream, manipulate, or try to provoke, you remain steady. You don't react out of impulse or ego. That stillness exposes who is unhealed and emotionally unstable. People around you get uncomfortable because their own turbulence is suddenly reflected back, amplified by your composure. They expect noise, conflict, or drama, but what they get is clarity. Your calmness is not passive. It's a force. It's a boundary, a shield, and a spotlight all at once. The ones who thrive on controlling others immediately feel challenged. They've built their lives around provoking reactions, pushing buttons, and stirring emotional storms to feel powerful. When that fails against you, it unsettles them. Your ability to remain centered while their chaos rages around them feels like psychological dominance. They can't touch your peace, and that's terrifying for anyone who depends on instability to feel superior. To protect their fragile ego, they project and label your centeredness as manipulation. They twist your control over yourself into something sinister because they have no frame of reference for emotional sovereignty. What they can't grasp is that your stillness is not about them. It's about you. It's a reflection of mastery, of knowing that reacting to chaos only gives it more energy. You've learned to observe, to let the storm pass through without being swept away, and to act only when your timing aligns with wisdom rather than impulsiveness. That ability makes others feel like you have unseen power because in reality you do. You are not controlling them. You are controlling yourself, and that is more potent than any manipulation. People who misunderstand this mistake patience for strategy, neutrality for manipulation, and inner strength for psychological warfare. They are not used to someone who can stay still while the world tries to break them. Your calmness forces them to confront their own instability, and instead of doing the hard work of reflection, they assign blame. But your composure is untouchable because it is anchored in experience, self-awareness, and spiritual maturity. Remaining centered is not just survival, it is power in its purest form. It quietly shifts the balance of any interaction, and for those who thrive on chaos, that shift feels threatening enough to mislabel your integrity as manipulation. Number 8, you've learned the sacred art of timing, something most people never master because they confuse reaction with action. You don't rush to respond, you don't speak just to fill silence, and you don't move just because pressure demands it. You've realized that power isn't always in what's said or done, but in when it's said or done. Your restraint isn't manipulation, it's emotional intelligence in motion. You understand that timing determines impact, and that saying the right truth at the wrong moment can cause more harm than good. So, you wait, you observe, you feel the atmosphere, and when your spirit says move, you move with precision, not panic. This level of patience frustrates people who live off emotional immediacy. They want reaction, they want response, they want proof that they can still pull your strings. But when you don't flinch, when you don't give them the outburst or validation they crave, they call it playing games. What they fail to grasp is that your silence isn't a tactic, it's discernment. You've learned that not everything deserves your energy, not every argument deserves your explanation, and not every situation deserves your presence. Timing, to you, isn't about manipulation. It's about stewardship, protecting your peace and ensuring your words carry weight when you finally decide to speak. You've seen what happens when people move impulsively. They destroy connections, miss opportunities, and feed chaos. You've also seen what happens when someone understands divine tempo. How one well-timed truth can dismantle deception more effectively than 100 arguments. That's the rhythm you've learned to live by. You're not being mysterious, you're being intentional. Those who don't understand emotional maturity misinterpret your composure. They think your silence is a strategy to control them, but it's actually your refusal to be controlled. It's your way of preserving clarity while others drown in noise. Mastery always looks like manipulation to the undisciplined, because they only know movement born of anxiety, not wisdom. But you've grown beyond reacting just to prove a point. You've learned that divine timing doesn't chase validation. It delivers impact. And that's why when you finally speak or act, it doesn't just change a situation. It shifts the entire atmosphere. Number 9, you've reached a level of awareness that goes beyond surface perception. You don't just observe people, you feel them. It's not something you consciously try to do. It's something that happens naturally because your spirit reads energy faster than your mind processes words. You pick up on emotional undercurrents, the pauses, the tone shifts, the subtle avoidance in conversation. You sense when someone's confidence is masking insecurity, when their friendliness hides envy, when their anger is just unhealed pain speaking out loud. You don't judge it. You simply understand it. And that's what unsettles people, your ability to see them before they're ready to see themselves. You've learned that human behavior rarely matches human intention. People say they want honesty, but they fear being understood. They crave connection, yet hide behind facades. You pierce through those layers without effort, and that level of emotional visibility feels invasive to those who've built their entire identity on pretending. They don't realize that your understanding isn't an attack. It's awareness. But awareness makes the unhealed deeply uncomfortable. It mirrors what they've tried to suppress. So, instead of embracing your insight, they retreat from it, labeling you too intense, too deep, or too intuitive. What they don't understand is that your depth wasn't developed through study. It was forged through survival. You had to learn people, not for curiosity, but for protection. You had to sense intentions before they were spoken, because your safety, emotional or otherwise, depended on it. That kind of training sharpens a person's spirit. Now you can walk into a room and feel what others can't even articulate. You read sincerity like an open book and sense deceit like static in the air. The same people who once thought they could manipulate you now avoid eye contact because they know you can see what they've been hiding, not through suspicion, but through sensitivity. Your understanding dismantles illusions, exposes truth, and forces authenticity. And that's why many can't stay around you for long, not because you hurt them, but because you awaken the part of them that's been asleep for too long. You remind them that pretending no longer works. You remind them that truth, when met with real understanding, has nowhere left to hide. Number 10, you don't manipulate energy, you rebalance it. Your presence alone is a calibration. You carry a frequency that naturally exposes what's distorted and amplifies what's pure. When you walk into a space heavy with gossip, envy, or insecurity, the atmosphere changes without you saying a word. The vibration either rises to meet yours or collapses under its own weight. That shift isn't arrogance or control. It's alignment. Energy always seeks equilibrium, and your spirit simply enforces it. Those who thrive in low vibrations often misinterpret your calm power as manipulation because they can't comprehend energetic truth. To them, influence must mean control, not correction. But what you carry is a spiritual thermostat, not a puppet string. You don't force anything, your mere being exposes what's imbalanced. That's why people either feel profoundly peaceful around you or strangely irritated. Your energy doesn't adapt to dysfunction, it reveals it. And when truth walks into a room, everything false begins to tremble. You've noticed it. Conversations shift when you enter. The tone changes. Laughter feels forced. Confessions spill out without prompting. It's not that you're intimidating. It's that your energy demands authenticity. You've become the mirror the universe uses to show people who they really are. Some are elevated by your reflection, others are haunted by it. Either way, the energy moves. That's what it means to rebalance, to restore divine order in spaces where emotional chaos has become the norm. The unhealed call it manipulation because they can't explain why they suddenly feel uncomfortable in your presence. But that discomfort isn't punishment, it's purification. You trigger what's unaligned because light always exposes imbalance. Your frequency doesn't fight darkness, it makes it irrelevant. And that's the quiet beauty of your power. You don't argue, force, or compete. You simply exist at a vibration that everything false must answer to. Number 11. You mastered empathy without becoming a slave to it. And that's what changed everything. You used to carry the weight of everyone else's pain like it was your personal responsibility. You'd walk into a room and feel the sorrow no one spoke of, the anger they masked with smiles, the exhaustion they hid behind laughter. It was like emotional static everywhere you went, and it drained you because you didn't yet understand boundaries. You thought love meant absorbing everyone's suffering. But then, somewhere along your journey, you realized that feeling everything doesn't mean owning everything. You evolved into someone who could sense pain without being consumed by it. You learned that empathy isn't about bleeding for others. It's about seeing their wounds without reopening your own. You became emotionally sovereign. That's a level of maturity most people never reach, because true empathy with boundaries looks foreign to those who survive on emotional dependence. They're used to relationships built on pity, rescue missions, and endless self-sacrifice. So when you show love without losing yourself, they mistake your emotional balance for coldness. But your detachment isn't indifference, it's mastery. You've learned to feel deeply without drowning. You've understood that God never asked you to suffer with everyone. He asked you to see them clearly. That's why your empathy now heals instead of harms. You can listen without being infected by their chaos. You can support without being consumed by their storms. You can stand in someone's darkness and still keep your light intact. That's not a lack of emotion. It's emotional intelligence at its highest form. To the codependent, it feels like rejection. To the unhealed, it looks like manipulation. But to God, it's proof that you've mastered what most never do, emotional responsibility. You no longer confuse love with sacrifice or kindness with weakness. You've learned that protecting your energy doesn't make you unkind, it makes you wise. And in that wisdom, your empathy has become divine, guided, not drained. You don't carry people anymore, you remind them they can walk. Number 12. You don't manipulate people. You challenge their emotional hierarchy. You've outgrown the invisible power games that most people use to maintain control. They rely on emotional weapons, anger to intimidate, guilt to trap, silence to punish. It's how they establish dominance in their relationships and social circles. But you've disarmed all of that simply by not reacting. You've learned that the moment you stop feeding emotional chaos, the system collapses. And that terrifies those who depend on manipulation to feel powerful. Your lack of reaction feels like rebellion to them. When they try to provoke, guilt trip, or shame you, and you stay calm, it dismantles their illusion of control, because their tactics only work when you respond. When you refuse to, you expose the truth. Their authority was never real. They were never leading. They were just louder. They were never strong. They were just emotionally louder than everyone else in the room. And when you don't play their game, you become the threat. Not because you manipulate, but because you don't need to. That's why they call you emotionally manipulative. It's projection, a defense mechanism for people whose power only exists in reaction. You've revealed how fragile their dominance truly is. Your stillness doesn't match their script, so they label it as control. But what they're really feeling is exposure. They're realizing they've spent years confusing emotional chaos with connection, and your composure makes that truth impossible to ignore. You've mastered the rare art of emotional detachment, not apathy, but balance. You no longer rise to every bait or chase every misunderstanding. You understand that the one who controls their emotions controls the entire atmosphere, and that makes you powerful in a way that feels unfair to the unhealed. To them, your calm looks like manipulation because they've never seen emotional integrity that doesn't bend to pressure. But in truth, your energy simply mirrors back what's already there. You don't dominate anyone. You just remove the illusions they built their control upon. And once you do, the hierarchy crumbles. Not because you destroyed it, but because it was never real to begin with. Number 13. Your energy forces people to reveal their emotional curriculum, whether they mean to or not. Every interaction with you becomes a test they didn't study for. You don't have to provoke or analyze. Their reactions to your presence do all the revealing. It's almost effortless. The insecure ones expose their jealousy without you ever saying a word. The controlling ones expose their fear of losing power. The emotionally intelligent ones, though, they meet your energy with recognition, not resistance, because energy doesn't lie, and your vibration naturally sorts truth from pretense. You've probably noticed how quickly people's emotional depth, or lack of it, surfaces around you. That's because your energy acts as a spiritual mirror. When people encounter you, they meet the part of themselves they've been avoiding. The healed ones see your peace as alignment. The wounded ones see it as a threat. The difference isn't in you, it's in their level of consciousness. Your presence simply brings it to light. You don't judge, you don't expose. They do it themselves by how they respond to your frequency. It's a strange gift to carry because it means you never get surface-level connections. You attract intensity, realness, because your energy doesn't allow anything shallow to survive for long. Some people will open up to you instantly, telling you things they've never said out loud. Others will suddenly pull back, uncomfortable with how naked their emotions feel in your presence. Both are reactions to the same thing. Your energy is diagnostic. It reads what's hidden, not to exploit it, but to awaken it. Those who label you manipulative are really confessing that they only know one emotional language: control. They can't comprehend what it means to engage without agenda. But those who are evolved, those who've done the inner work, feel something completely different: safety, truth, resonance. They recognize that you're not playing emotional chess. You're operating on emotional truth. You've become a walking reflection of where people stand in their own healing. Your presence doesn't change them. It simply reveals them. And that's the silent power of your gift. Without ever intending to, you turn every encounter into a spiritual classroom, exposing the real syllabus of their soul. Number 14. You're not a master manipulator. You're a master reflector. People project, and you return what's real. That's your quiet power. You don't twist emotions or play mental games. You simply reveal what's already there. When someone stands before you, they're not just meeting you, they're meeting themselves through you. Your energy has the strange ability to surface what people try hardest to hide: their guilt, their pride, their motives, their contradictions. And because that level of reflection is uncomfortable, they don't see it as illumination. They call it manipulation. It's easier to accuse you of control than to admit that your presence made them confront truths they weren't ready to face. That's why you're misunderstood. You awaken conscience, and conscience doesn't always feel like kindness. It feels like exposure. People crave validation, not self-awareness. But you don't give them what they want. You give them what's true. You reflect their real vibration back at them, stripped of the ego and excuses they use to disguise it. To the healed, that's liberating. To the unhealed, that's threatening. Your empathy is surgical. You don't use it to manipulate. You use it to mirror. You see through words, through masks, through performances. And in that seeing, you bring things to the surface that were meant to stay buried. That's why people often say, "I don't know why I just told you that." Their spirit recognizes you before their mind does. Your energy invites truth to step out of hiding. But for those who've built their identity on illusion, that reflection feels like exposure. They don't want to look at themselves. They want to look away. So they rewrite the story. They turn your discernment into deception, your empathy into strategy, your peace into control. It's how they protect their ego from accountability. But you've learned that's part of the calling. Reflectors don't seek validation. They reveal vibration. And your gift doesn't just expose others. It refines you. Every reflection you hold up sharpens your understanding of truth, love, and boundaries. You're not manipulating anyone. You're holding up the mirror of consciousness. And not everyone is ready to face their own reflection. In the end, what defines you as a chosen one isn't your ability to manipulate emotions. It's your mastery over your own energy, your clarity in the midst of chaos, and your unwavering commitment to truth. You've transformed experiences that once left you broken into a finely tuned awareness that reads, reflects, and realigns the emotional currents around you. Every accusation of manipulation, every whisper of misunderstanding, every uncomfortable glance thrown your way is merely a mirror reflecting the limitations of those who can't comprehend your depth. Your calmness, your timing, your empathy, your energy, all of it isn't a tool to control others, but a natural extension of your spiritual sovereignty. You've learned to operate on a higher frequency, where emotions are signals, not chains, where silence is strategic, not submissive, where understanding precedes judgment, and where your very presence can illuminate the truth others desperately try to hide from themselves. You've become the living testament that emotional mastery doesn't require domination. It requires discernment, balance, and the courage to remain unshaken while the world tests every boundary. The world may try to twist your power into manipulation because they are unfamiliar with someone who refuses to play by the rules of deceit, chaos, or insecurity. But you've seen through the masks, navigated the storms, and walked away still centered, still sovereign, still aligned. Your energy doesn't just protect you, it awakens, elevates, and exposes. It challenges the unhealed while harmonizing with the awakened. That is the true mark of a chosen one, not reaction, but mastery, not control, but reflection, not chaos, but calibration. If you resonate with this message, understand your power, and are ready to embrace your truth, make sure to stay connected. Subscribe to the channel for more deep insights into the path of mastery. Like this video to support the wisdom being shared. Comment below with your experiences or breakthroughs so we can learn from one another and share it with someone who needs to hear the truth today. Your journey isn't just personal, it's part of a greater awakening. Step fully into your energy and watch how the world reacts when you no longer participate in its illusions. God bless you.